it's like, howdy, Arwin, Bright Tie, Viola, Brickfinger, Flip Flap, Free Ball and Bear, Danny O, Chris N, Bill Nye the Science Denier, Nick, Jack, Steve, Daddy Nick, Emmanuel, Multiple Division, Moonbeam Bear. Well, howdy, Mr. Breeze, Jimmy James, Slow Mo Moon Buggy. Oh, by the way, Jimmy James, it's, even though I gave the truck driver a copy, you officially have the first copy of Savage Memes, technically. Because we always save like the first 10, 5 anyway. So I didn't want that truck driver post to take away the glory of you having the first print to the public. Thank ya. When are they shipping? They're all shipping now. I mean, it's insane. We went over to Grandma's house, took over her whole kitchen area, dining room, and den. You guys, there's so many books. I mean, when we first started, the volume 1 only had 750. We did that in a tiny little living room in our, like, right at the couch. And then we got 1,000 in volume 2, and we were still able to kind of manage it. It was a little crazy. But, and this is still technically small time comparatively, you know, because everything else would be, you know, the big boys, you know, they do thousands, 50, 100,000. It's all Amazon robots doing it. But there's love. It's my entire family, basically, at least my local family, including Minnie and Isla. So it's really cool to have them all a part of it. It's also really cool to have them see what else we're doing. You know, normally they just have me drawing on the iPad or thumb warring, which they remind me get off my phone. But this, in addition to the painting, watching me paint and do things in the physical, having them see production, you know, what it looks like to produce and to work. I mean, my oldest is so, like, she loves work. She wanted to skip dinner. She was like, I want to work. I was like, you are a true Asian. You are a true little Chinese maker. You belong, I make factory for you. I make factory for you. I make you feel at home. I make you feel at home and good. You go to work. We limit your food intake. We limit your rest. We don't even stop and get your homework done. So it's still insane. And it's like we have a stack of books. We bring them to the post office and we're like, this is insane. And it turns out it's like 200 books at a time. But it all adds up. It's slowly but surely. And we're pretty much busting ass, you know. So I'm pretty excited. Insourcing Asian labor is the best. Yeah, that's the way to go, Bowler Bear. That's the way to go. Will there be a shipped? Yeah, you'll get a confirmation email. Basically, when Megan prints the labels. So, again, for those of you who did the pre-order, it's about 1,600 of you up until the last, you know, the last order that we took for a pre-order, which is the bonus pack with the stickers and stuff. And so those of you who ordered months ago and didn't yell at me, all of those are going out first. So I think we might be up to the first 1,000 by now, hopefully. I'll buy 10 books if one Barricade Garage impression. No. I can't do it. And I won't do that exchange. There's too many people who want the book. Too many people want it. How many did I sell? I think I printed 3,000. I think we're at, I bet we're about just under 2,000. And they'll all go. I didn't advertise at all. I'll probably do a post on Gab. I think that people will like that, especially if I shoot another like mini commercial in my house. I'm trying to think of funny things. I thought of one. It was a little intense though, because it's very Hitler and Nazi oriented. Like someone's reading a book, just like a normal dude, just kind of sitting at the park reading a book, reading Savage Means Volume 3, and like this, girl or they comes over and is like, "What are you reading?" It's like, "Oh, Savage Means Volume 3." And he's like, and then the girl is like, "Oh, really? Well, you might as well just." And then she raises his hand, his right hand, to this shape, to this posture. "Well, you might as well just raise your hand." And then one other thing, and then she just like draws this big chalky little Hitler mustache, and she gets all pissed and runs away and like has her mask on and stuff, and then she even squirts her hands with sanitizer. And you cut back to the guy who was just reading a book on the bench, and he's still holding the book, but he's saluting Hitler, and he has a little charcoal mustache, and he's just like, "What the fuck?" See, that's really fast and easy. I just don't know. I mean, if people, I don't know anything about advertising. I don't know if that's like, oh, definitely, I'll buy that book. The African Booster Kids cartoon is high grade culture jamming. Oh yeah. Yeah, it's a little, it's the funny thing about that, and this is why I like doing layers in my stuff, is that what seems to be something to virtue signal about has a secondary layer to it, which is, yes, it's important to feed the hungry, but there's a certain, like, especially with aid, some people started talking about aid, not AIDS, which is also associated with Africa. Aid, aid is most of the times a cover for a lot of other dark shit, whether it's soft imperialism, debt, economic hitmen, or child trafficking. It's always under the thing of aid, and then it never helps. Oh, we're gonna ship a bunch of Nikes and clothing, and get these people dressed, and then they're all wearing Nike. They're still as poor as they were, and then there's no textile industry. They just ruin it by giving them everything. So that's what's funny about the post, is that it just shows the idiocy of caring about an imaginary French tickler that's going to get inside you, and you're going to pass out like a guy, a Chinese man from, some footage they gathered from 2002 from the street corner. You're upset about that. You want them to get their injections, but you don't care if they're hungry. Again, it's just like the point isn't do anything about either. I think you're supposed to feed the hungry and help the needy in your direct area. I think that's the best way to manage that kind of philanthropy. Otherwise, it's all hidden. It's all a bunch of Sarah McLachlan songs. It's all a bunch of pictures of kids without water, where you're like, well, why isn't he holding a picture, of water? Why isn't he holding a bottle? Obviously, the photographer had a bottle of water. Hoodly Dal, I didn't forget, obviously. Just a little overwhelmed with all of the books. But I just finished, a couple days ago, I finished the, I don't know if I should tell you guys. No, I'm not going to tell you. It's a cameo. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, it's a cameo, man.
someone asked a question on one of the posts, and I wanted to, wow, the moon's out. Yeah. What was it? Oh, it was, I was talking about rights, human rights, and how, I did a post of how, people, the typical atheist is like, you believe in things without evidence, and then they're all about human rights. You're like, where's the human right? Someone wrote, and I didn't work this out in my head fully. It was that, the argument was, if you assume free will exists, right, then you by default must accept the concept of human rights. And I thought about that, and I was having trouble finding an angle that disrupts that. And I realized that I only have to find one place where that isn't true. And I understand the starting argument, which is like you're accepting metaphysical concepts, and you're just kind of re-tagging them, renaming them. But I don't buy it, because free will is God-given. It's not human-given. Rights are a human construct. The only possible way to tie rights to anything grounding would be to tie it to God-given rights, which was a smart move on the Enlightenment, the people, the people in their feather pens and whatnot, to include that. But I realized that no, a human right, let's say you have, you determine it's a human right to be able to move freely. Well, the free will of movement and the human right of movement includes potentially stepping over someone else's human right to, say, property. And so if a human right ends up that you can't exert the human right, if you can't really fully do it, that means it's not truly absolute, whereas free will is. And the reason free will is absolute is not only there are consequences in the natural world to free will, whether it be stepping off a cliff or stealing someone's bread and then they retaliate or whatever, all of these risks. The real ultimate value of free will is the moral plane. It's the metaphysical, your relationship with God and His will and the commandments and the scriptures. Everything else that's attempted to be based in the material world, like human rights, you know what I mean? Like, so if you're being moral and you're exerting your free will, there's nothing about human rights at the heavenly tribunal. You live pretty consistent with God's will, but these human rights issues, you're like, no. The human rights thing is pretty much based in the natural world, even though the term right is a metaphysical term. It doesn't actually exist in nature. The convention of it does, because it's given by a justice system, a right. Oh, you trampled. That means, otherwise, if it was full anarchy, there's no rights. There's no lawful argument for rights or violation of rights or violation of person or any of this stuff. It's all moral. So even in the fullest extent of an anarchistic reality, you'd still only be dealing with truly morality and free will. You deal with the consequences, but they're up in the air. They're not always the same. In other words, for every action, let's say for every risky action you took against fellow man, it wouldn't be absolutely consistent what the repercussions are. Whereas in moral law, God's judgment is pure and perfect and objective. And we can't actually tell you what it is for each person. And that's why really when it comes down to it, there's only moral law, and why the person who commented, though it's a really interesting angle, I think that's a really, at least not a lazy angle to take as far as trying to compare free will and say, well, if you accept free will, you accept human rights. I disagree. I disagree for the reasons I just stated. That you'll always have free will and that human rights, they could potentially change given some sort of symposium of ass hats. They can change with trend over time, whereas free will is the thing that we were given by our creator. And so you could actually use free will and appeal to free will to make absent the concept of of human rights. You still have free will. You can actually trample on human rights. You can have free will and obliterate the concept of human rights in action. So it's not true that if you accept free will, you must accept human rights. So I appreciate the stab at it, but I knew there was something off about that didn't make sense. Yum, yum, boo, you. I have a bunch of copper to recycle, but I can't seem to find a part with it. I don't know, you just got a hoarding problem. I was thinking when I finally finished, and I'm doing my work full-time, that is painting, making books, live streaming, all the stuff, working from home, NFTs, whatever it takes to get out of my day job, because I am uninspired. It's nothing to do with any of the protocols, which we don't follow any of. It's more like I'm sitting there and I'm making jewelry and I'm just uninspired. I have a fire under my ass and it's sitting and making, as good as the job is, I'm pretty much almost ready. But then I was thinking, if I have a home studio, I could probably make silver spoons like Paul Revere for people who want like family spoons or family ladles. I made one ladle for Owen, but that was just for him. I didn't think like, I'll make ladles, but I could. I think you guys would buy a ladle or a spoon, right? A little silver spoon, a family name spoon or something like that, made in my whatever workshop I can gather up. I think that's a way to keep my skilled labor, which is metalsmithing, in place, unless I go full welding. But as masculine as I can be, I still have jorts, and I'm still drawn to aesthetics, design, fabrication, creativity, choice. Whereas I don't know if that's there's enough for me to keep my creative fire burning in the welding area, larger scale welding. But anyway, I was thinking about that, and I was like, people would buy family spoon, like a family spoon, a family ladle, whatever, silverware. I could totally make silverware. So that's what I've been thinking about. Family crests, that would be cool. Yeah, that'd be cool. Like a basic, I develop a basic spoon or a knife handle, and then the artisan part, it ends up being the crest, like a little disc circle that's at the end or hidden somewhere on the end. And then obviously it's not primarily for use, though you could use it. It's just to have, it's like a keepsake, and it's silver, so it's got its value, in desperate times. Bayonet, yeah, that would be cool. So I work on commission, yeah, but not absolutely. Like, there are things I'll say no to. I'll buy a spoon made by Jim Mob. Yeah, exactly. And I love making spoons. It was a joy. It was awesome making that ladle for Owen. Like, I bought the dapping, the half dome dapping sphere thing. It brought me back to when I started learning in the beginning, where it was like all this like old school fabrication, which we got away from, in general. We use CAD programs now and all this stuff, but hitting and forming and annealing and keeping the metal nice and, the whole process, heating it, putting on the handle, riveting, shit's cool. You know, I can't just skip into knife making, you know, doing that Damascus steel stuff. That takes generations of learning. I would learn quicker than most people just because of my background, but I would need I would want an apprentice for a master for that, to teach me that, so I can watch, actually learn. So that's less likely, even though that's kind of cool too, is making blades. I think it's pretty cool. There's a guy in town who makes chef knives, and I could ask him, be like, dude, Sunday, can I come over? I'll trade you an NFT. He'd be like, what? What? Is making engagement rings? Yeah, on my own, definitely. Yep. Yeah, I've done that for a while. And that's pretty good. I mean, people do save their money for those. And they're willing to pay what it takes to have these little hobbit hands touch their ring. Oh, what? Do you have a forge? Actually, I don't even know what a forge is. I feel like forge is a verb. Or is it the fire? Is it like that's the fire? No, I just use little torches. You know, I use a little Smith torch. You could add different torch tips for different uses. You really only need an oxygen tank and a propane tank, and the combo of the two, along with a torch, and you need a rolling mill to do wire and flat work. You need, like I said, a dapping tool, a big log, an annealing pan. Annealing is when you heat the metal to a bright red evenly, and what it does is it creates displacement within the crystalline structure, and it makes it malleable. And every time you work the metal, the empty spaces between the lattice work inside get closer together, and that's what makes it stiff and brittle. So it's stiff and it's strong in a way, but it's also brittle, so it can break and snap. So that's the artistry of metal smithing, and being a metallurgist is understanding the properties of metal and seeing and feeling what's going on in the metal without being able to actually look inside the metal. And that's just become innate to me. So that's cool stuff too. It's all cool stuff, especially thinking of it out of the context of like working in this, a company setting, which I've enjoyed, but sooner or later, it's got to be sooner. And I'm just like ready to be home, like doing work and hanging out with my wife all day, and like the kids go to school and we have time to paint and hang out, and like I think the goal is when I get my 2 acres and I could because I live in a really small place. I basically live in the same size space as Owen in his little tiny barn, except mine is a little townhouse and it doesn't have any of the land or the animals. So, that's my goal. Oh, I missed a super chat. I'm sorry. Let me see. Let's see. Sorry, I've just been looking this way and that way. Hummingbird Ranch. Missed you, JB. Excited for memes 3. Question, what are your thoughts on Stoics? I haven't really gotten into Stoics. I need to study it more. I know, if I recall from what I looked into, it was limited. It didn't fully, in other words, in the previous streams, it doesn't fully, on its own, account for the 3 major branches in philosophy. It doesn't tie them all together and ground morality together, and I think there's some truth in there. I forgot what it was. Someone could, in the chat, could give me like the basic summary. I kind of forgot. I thought it was something about like, really acknowledging and welcoming, enduring suffering and correct me if I'm wrong. generally. I forgot though. Someone could tell me. Something like that. Someone was also arguing, the branches, trying to put another interesting question is like, are there really just 3 branches of philosophy, or can you add like other ones? And someone was arguing you could add aesthetics, but I was like, no, that's just metaphysics. Metaphysics, ethics, or morality. I don't know why they chose ethics. I reject that. Metaphysics, morality, and epistemology. Like, how do you ground any knowledge? How do you know of any knowledge? How do you have access to any knowledge? You could argue that epistemology might be the only category, and that metaphysics and morality are even within that folder. But that's why things like beauty and aesthetics that's a metaphysical concept. It's a metaphysical item in the bucket, And then it also ties, and I was thinking about how aesthetics can tie, and beauty can tie into morality, because if it's open, like my argument with spirituality, which is, it's just spirituality, man. It's just the water. Don't be the fish. That'll lock you into a wholeness, a holistic thing that, gives you walls. You don't want walls, man. You want the ocean. And you're like, no, that means everything's included. That means anything goes, in that ocean. Any sort of behavior. And that's why that's why the whole openness to all things, it's all one man. It can't justify things that are, again, it conflicts with God's will. It conflicts with true morality. And so the question is, when it gets to, aesthetics and how it ties into morality, you'd think, well, how can that possibly be? Aesthetics, it's like what I like. It's like what's beautiful, and there's a standard for beauty or whatever. Well, it all needs the same standard. That's why. And the reason it's tied is that you could argue that, like Dildo Dawkins could just be like, well, it's beautiful. I love when you put the little Haitian boy over the Spitfire and it gets crispy. It's a beautiful thing. It's the aesthetics of pulling the arm off, and dipping it in the saucy sauce. So you can call anything beautiful then. Blood, watching a death is beautiful. Watching a murder, you can get into dark shit and convince yourself that something's beautiful. That the beauty of something that would otherwise be stigmatized or looked down upon or seen as a degenerate, disgusting, inhumane act could suddenly be beautiful based on aesthetics alone. And so that's why epistemology, morality, and metaphysics all have to tie together. They all must be tied together and lead to one source. Oh, little mango saucy, bossy. Yes. Oh. Oh. Yes. Yep. What was I thinking? I'm actually not prepared to talk about this, but I'm sure Arwen can help me out. I was listening to someone argue about Newtonian gravity and Einsteinian, and they're talking about F equals ma, force equals mass times acceleration, and they were talking about how because the argument is like Einsteinian superseded Newtonian, and was like, well, no, it's bendy space-time now. You're like, what? Is it like, no, don't ask me questions. It's space-time bends. You're like, oh, the tongue thing. That's cool. I guess I don't want to ask you any more questions. So tongue is to Einstein as wheelchair is to Hawking's. I get it. good. I get what they're doing now. You know, do a little trick with your body, distort something, have that be the sticker for your non-theory, and then people will just accept it. Be like, well, no way, Einstein has crazy hair and he stuck his tongue out. What are you talking about? Obviously, he's a genius. Frizzy hair, tongue sticking out. Duh. Accent. Duh. And the guy was talking about how, you know, the person who he was debating, forget her name. I think her name is like Rachel or Rachy or something. Again, if your name's Rachel, don't go with Rachy. It just doesn't, it's not eloquent. She was, saying, well, where do you, if we're looking at two balls, on the, let's say the Cavendish experiment. By the way, there's nowhere in reality where you naturally observe two balls going together unless it's magnetism. And even in then, it's like you won't see that actually happen. You have to actually, energize those items with electricity. So, anyway. So you're looking at, mass attracts mass, and then Cavendish is like, I got a shitty non-experiment to do that totally reifies the initial cause of movement between two balls on an old piece of wood in like whatever 1789 or some shit. Anyway, there could be a million reasons why balls move on opposite ends of a stick. Okay. But regardless, let's just say they removed all other possible variables, which they didn't. But let's just say, just so we can move on. We observe the spinning, and then you put two other objects, and you're like, see, they're spinning toward the object. You're like, well, how do you know? Remove the objects and see if they still spin. See if the contraption still spins with the removed added masses you're saying are attracting each other. Anyway. Let's just give them that phenomenon happens. Forget it, just forget all the other variables, even though that's not science. And go, okay, so what's happening? And then they're like, mass attracts mass. And you're like, okay, so the mass itself is attracting mass. So you're describing something that you think is happening, but you're reifying the cause of it, which you're calling gravity, right? And you're like, yeah, right? So you're saying gravity is the initial force that's causing the mass to attract mass, right? Yeah. So that's like force equals mass times acceleration. So what's the force? And they're like, gravity. And you're like, and then you'll ask what gravity is, right? Well, it's acceleration. Wait. So gravity gets to be the F and the A? Yeah! And then there's like, well, it's the same. You're like, no, where do you get the force? And you're like, force is mass times acceleration. We don't need the guy was like, I think it was Fight the Flat Earth or something. He was like, you don't need the force. You just need acceleration. It's fine. So you're saying the force and the acceleration are the same thing? And you'll catch people saying this. Like, what's gravity? And they're like, it's an acceleration. You're like, what's causing that thing? Oh, the force of gravity. What's gravity? Oh, it's an acceleration. You can't put the same variable as F and A. They can't be both the same thing. The acceleration is the observed phenomenon. You're asking what's initially causing balls to hit together, which they don't, by the way. But let's just say they do. And then they're like, well, no, we don't need that anymore. It just works to understand at a local level. Einstein came along and was like, no, it looks like the balls going together are actually the bendings of space-times. And they're like, genius. You're like, what does that mean? Well, that means gravity equals the bending of space-time. You're like, oh, cool. You're a genius, dude. So gravity undefined variable, force, non-force, whatever the hell, equals the bending of space, the absence of matter, no properties, time, a conceptual tool we use to measure changes in magnitude. And they all just accept, everyone just like, bravo, bravo, you superseded Newton. Well, that seems to be the trick. If you have a shitty concept of what reality is, and again, mathematics is not reality. If you have a shitty concept that requires only math to rely on and not demonstrable evidence with proper variables, dependent control and experiment, you can easily supersede the same bullshit reification with another reification. And that's generally what's happening everywhere in modern science, in physics, cosmology, astrophysics, astronomy, is that the wheel, the snowball effect of bullshit is being pushed down. It's being pushed up a hill, actually. You know, normally associate, you roll the snowball down the hill and it gathers all the snow. It's actually losing snow, and they just keep trying to add shit to it while they push it uphill. And it's like getting closer to heat, and it's melting all the time, and they're just like, hurry up. It's like, we have a pretty coherent understanding of the beginning of time. Let me think about this. And they're like, oh shit, we don't have enough energy or matter to justify our bullshit theory. Let's create something. Well, what are we missing? What are we missing? It doesn't really matter. Just make something up. Matter. Dark matter. Okay. Matter of color. It's just, as soon as you see the circularity and you realize how to very concisely, gently, clearly point to the circularity without getting crazy, without going into other ideas or concepts about what you think it might be, you just point out very clearly that the effect cannot be the cause. And someone might, it can be. Well, effects can be causes of other effects. You're like, okay, we're not talking about that. Can you show me the bend? First of all, can you show me the bending of space-time? You can't. Second of all, can you show me that it causes an effect? Well, no, because we can't really isolate the independent variable because it's everywhere all the time. So we can't actually prove it. We just know it exists all over the place and it's causing the thing because there's no other choice. Well, that's not science, kiddo. And there's a reason Copernicus was like, yeah, astronomy can't furnish a hypothesis. I wonder if they all gasped then. They were like, Coperni, why are you doing this? You're getting all sorts of tips and free bread. And they were like, you could go to the brothels for free. And now, why would you do this? Run your tweets through me. He's like, no. Astronomy can't furnish a hypothesis. Some people don't even accept that. They need to think in their head that just assuming stuff by looking into the sky is enough. And they'll say, well, no, because, proper science is too limiting. It's too strict. No, that's why it's called science. That's why it's science. That's your argument of trust the science, all these scientismos worshiping science. The only reason we got to a point in the first place where you thought it was plausible to worship a method was because it was so strict. It's because you couldn't just let anyone off the hook with any given non-hypothesis. That's why. There's going to be a new era of science. A lot of people are going to go off further into simulation world, especially with the advent of virtual reality, Ready Player One kind of existence for people, where, laws of physics and understanding truth doesn't even matter if you can put a helmet on and go on a date with Lisa Simpson. So the good news is people who want truth, whether it's the truth, biblical truth, whether they want moral truth, wisdom, or they want, proper scientific knowledge about in the world, about reality. There's going to be a huge demand for it, because the further people push into helmet world, the more rare, I would say, proper understanding of physical reality will be. Out of the fact that most people are going to choose pragmatism, and they're going to choose convenience, and choose their appetites, and choose their chemical responses that are designer. This concept of designer drugs, well, just extrapolate that out to designer experience, designer life, designer hell, designer, lowercase heaven in the world, and the rest will, keep bonded to the world we were given, the physical world, and the pairing of the physical, the heaven, and the earth, and the metaphysical, heaven, metaphysical, earth, material, and always establishing a coherent relationship between the two through our spirit, through our goodness, through our through who we are with each other as fathers and brothers and sisters and mothers. Gravity. There's no relationship between gravity, weight, and gravitation. The gravitational constant is sleight of hand. It's all tricks. It's all big parlor tricks. The whole thing. The whole shebang. Yeah, but you're saying you're not going to fall off a ladder? No. Science studies money and how to get more. Exactly. There's definitely a science to monetary science. Absolutely. I casually remarked how the moon is transparent. Yeah, it's right now. Well, it just went away. Transparent during the day. That's because there's not enough light. Does that make any sense to anyone? Yeah, I was thinking about this, how we talked about light in a previous stream, about how, we don't actually see light, and we see objects, and we always see the relationship what we call light has with objects. And so during the day, there's light, there's a source of what we call light, and it's reflecting off of everything, including, probably small amounts of air, the blue that we see, the fact that things have colors and reflect frequencies. So there's an energy that's shedding whatever we call light on objects that have their own frequency, and we're collecting all of that in our eyes. But if you have a P900 and it's the daytime and the moon is fully out, you zoom in, and what you witness is that you're zooming in somehow beyond light, beyond what we call light, beyond what we call day. And so in that regard, I think it's at least a rational deduction to be like, oh, whatever the moon is, regardless of what it's made of, I think it's calcite. I think it reflects light, and also it gets charged during the day. Anyway, you're basically zooming past the layer that's light. And I don't know if that makes sense or it can be replicated. I might be wrong about that, but I think there might be a way to zoom past. Yeah, you can replicate that. You're in a room with a camera, and the room is lit, right? And your camera is good enough to zoom outside of the room through an open window into darkness. And you'd zoom in on the darkness and you'd be leaving the light. Your zoom would bring you past where light is entering, I guess. Which I don't know how that's possible for the camera to zoom, to be in light and not to be pulling in light from the direct environment it's in, which is lit. So when you zoom in to the moon during the day, it looks like it's pitch black and you're just looking at a bright shining moon. At least when I've done it. I mean, I could be hallucinating. Hello. At least the last time I checked, it was like that. I'm trying to think if there's a time where I zoomed in and it looked like daytime moon. And I don't know if I'm remembering like a video I've seen where I was like, oh, look, the moon is like transparent right now. And they zoomed in on it and it was like, oh, it's transparent. But I'm pretty sure with my P900, if it's daytime and the moon is out, I will zoom in fully on it and it won't look like daytime moon. I don't know. I got to try it again. I've looked at the moon during dusk, even at 80 times, and it was still light around the moon. Interesting. Yum. Did you guys see the airlock door flapping? Oh my God. I've seen that before, but someone posted a recent one. I sent it to my brothers. So funny. Just this cardboard flat. How could you look at that and be like, yeah, no, that's just the effect of weightlessness in the space, and they're going 17,000 miles per hour. And it's just, you don't understand, Jim Bob. It's just, they have to design the door flaps really floppy so that they, otherwise they're too, stop it. It's science. It's like, I don't know who was the art director on that shoot, but I don't know if that was underwater. That's what it was. They made something and didn't realize that over time, the water in the pool that they shoot all their videos in would basically be fully embodied in the object. Whatever it was, it absorbed water. That's my hunch. It was actually solid. They probably did a couple of shoots with that same door flap, and it was like solid. And they were like, oh, sweet. And that one time they got lazy, and I think it absorbed all the water and got really floppy and bouncy. And they were like, fuck it. Some little intern who's so excited to wear a NASA jumpsuit and a lanyard was like, Don, is this going to be a problem? Look at the flaps. Look at the flappy door.
Well, that is just good engineering. I mean, the question isn't whether or not that is a flappy door. The question is, how many people know whether or not astronauts should have a flappy door or not? The true engineering that NASA does is in the mind. That is the true engineering. And people often take that clip of me and they think I'm talking about actual physics engineering. No, I am talking about mental engineering.
Yeah. It definitely, Sean Hawkins is live. Oh, that's a treat. That guy wonders why he's not invited on anyone's channel, because all he does is curse and cough All he does is name call and cough. I mean, I asked them a pretty basic question. If you can take a little toy and look to the sky and determine what shape you're on from looking at the sky, then if I put you on a massive trapezoid that you didn't know was a trapezoid, you should be able to determine that it's a trapezoid from looking at the sky. You can't. It took me a while. I'll see if I can find the link. I screen grabbed it, so I'll just post it in my Instagram story because it's so funny. Let's all go to his stream after JB. Yeah, definitely. You know, I usually ask him to like see his ankle monitor as a joke. Sometimes I'll ask him to show some skin. He's like, "What the fuck is wrong with you? You fucking coward." But ask him simple questions. Really simple questions. He goes nuts. He loses his shit so fast. Coward. He's trying to explain the sextant now. Yeah, they really want to figure out a way that the sextant works without assuming a flat line. I mean, it's not that hard to understand that you're just assuming you need a flat line. Like, you can't use the thing without a flat line. So, no way around it. I mean, the best way to argue back is be like, do you need a flat straight line? They have to say yes. Could they not build a computer model of how things look standing on a sphere? No, because models, I mean, you're just assuming the model's correct. No, the only way to determine what you're on, like, in other words, if there's an object in a box and you have the dimensions of the box around the object, let's say somehow the object is floating in the box, however it is. If the object, you had some sort of tech, maybe lasers or video or, you know, even a camera on every like quarter inch of that object, and it measured the distance between the surface of that where it was measuring against the container, which in this case would be a box, then you could determine from basically reversing engineering it, basically, what the shape is. It's almost like, you know, those like things you put your hand in with the needles, and the needles all contour around. You need something consistent that makes a contour so that you could know what the negative space is. So if there was something that was uniform that we can look up that was containing us, and we could verify the measurement between where we are and that thing, that barrier, then we could determine if we had enough pinpoints all around, we could basically derive a rough shape of something. But that's actually not what they're doing with a sextant. Also, the assumption that determining the angle or the slope of something over an amount of land, right, or even determining through trigonometry that the lower line, let's say the bottom line of a triangle, is actually not straight 90 degrees, right? So in other words, you have a 90-degree angle going up, you have my thumb going across, And when you draw that third line, the point of the bottom of the L and the top of the L should meet. And if it's up, that means your bottom line needs to go down a little bit. But that only tells you the slope, a straight line slope of the bottom line. It doesn't, you know, if that was a floor, that doesn't tell you the object of the floor, you know, that the floor is on. That just tells you the slope, the angle of a line. A line. Anyway, I gotta go. I'm gonna get right back to booking tonight, and I've got a couple paintings to finish. But I won't be taking any paintings for a couple weeks. If you do want to order a painting, just understand that it won't be until after I get this first massive batch of book sales out to you guys, because you guys waited patiently. So I'm gonna, you know, not do the other things that I've been doing and just put you guys in priority. That's about it. Yeah, go say hi to Sean Hawkins. You know, he loves it. He actually looks forward. He's bored with people who just agree with him. He just wants to be a part of the community, even if he's the, you know, the drunken sailor. Anyway, peace. And be nice. He's not gonna be nice to you. So I just try to be nice with him. He's very gentle. Anyway, God bless. Bye.